Welcome into the Jackson Post podcast, episode 10, 11,
No,
10,
I just saw 11 on the page. It's 12.
12, episode 12. But some of those videos might have been, anyway, 12. We'll say it's 12.
All right.
Episode 12. On a Thursday night, Brandon, I just saw you a few hours ago at an agenda review meeting that we will get to later in this conversation.
Right.
So, hello again.
Yeah.
On a Thursday night, we had some mix-ups I had a mix-up on last Sunday night, flight delays and all kinds of stuff, so we couldn't meet up on our regular scheduled night. So here we are. Double edition. We are doing 2 editions of the Jackson Post in one podcast. So
for those who keep up with current events in Jackson, Tennessee, it's a double stuffed Oreo of content and discussion.
I wish I had a double stuffed Oreo right now. I almost called this Last Week Tonight, like the John Oliver show, because it sort of is that, but I'm not as funny and as creative. So let's start with where we left off last time, right? Mm-hmm. Which it got a lot of clicks. So the majority of our discussion last week, based on the newspaper from May 15th, the week of May 15th. This is when the county commission, the lead up to the county commission meeting where they were selecting a new general sessions judge. Right. This was also the same, around the same time where we discussed the budget increases, specifically what Mayor Massey wanted. So we got some bows put on both of those last week, correct? Yes. In the county commission meeting. Yeah. And things went as we expected. Mark Patey was voted in as the new general sessions judge, and you were at that meeting, correct? Okay. How did the meeting play out? Was it smooth? Was it as expected based on what we heard in the caucus?
Smooth is not how I would describe that meeting. I think it may be the longest county commission meeting that they've had since Mike Taylor became chairman about 21 months ago or so. And 80% of the discussion was on one agenda item, and it was this one. I think we had 6 people come up and speak during public comments. Then we had all 4 nominated applicants come up and speak. And then after that, there was a good amount of discussion among the commissioners themselves, speaking about the process, speaking about different options they could take. One being to table the discussion and the vote until next month, which would have meant that Madison County would not have had a general sessions judge for a month unless they could have talked Judge Harvey into sticking around till June 30th. There was even some accusatory statements made about how the process went and some of the steps in the process, whether they be in public meetings or whether they be behind doors. I mean, it got kind of personal there for a second, but in the end, Mark Patey got 16 out of 25 votes. He just needed or whoever was going to win it just needed 13, which is the majority of 25. And even if there had been some absent county commissioners, which the last few months there's been between 1 and 4 absent each month, but they happen to all show up for this meeting. They still would have needed 13, and but he got 6. I think Police Chief Tom Corley got 7, and then the other 2 applicants, Jen Free and Bill Milam, each got 1 apiece. So now, unofficially, Judge Patey was the one who won the vote, and he'll start on Monday, June 2nd. He'll get his robe, he'll get his gavel, and he'll be ready to roll.
Is there like a swearing-in ceremony for that, or is he just grab a robe, throw it on, and get out there?
I'm sure there's got to be a swearing-in ceremony. We can't have anybody serving as a county officer without swearing them in.
It's some pomp and circumstance. I was following along on X. You were doing your live Xing or tweeting, whatever we call it now.
Yeah.
I'm
still calling it tweeting.
Tweeting, yes, because Xing just doesn't sound good. I was following along, and I really appreciated Judge Roy Morgan's comments. And I was looking for the quote in the paper, but I know that there just probably wasn't enough room to give those full quotes. Do you remember the gist of what he was saying whenever he spoke in front of county commission?
Yeah, pretty much. This vote that y'all have. I hate to call it an opportunity, but I'll go ahead and call it an opportunity. This opportunity that you have before you is so rare that only a few of y'all have ever done it, if any of y'all have ever done it. And I mean, we've got a county commissioner who's been serving for over 60 years. And I think he and the ones who've been serving for over 40 years are the only ones who've done this. And he said, this isn't an appointment of another commissioner. This is not an appointment of a school board member, because they've done a handful of those over the last few years. This is something totally different. You can't just put anybody who applies who happens to have a law degree into that position. You need somebody who knows what they're doing and can handle a handle a courtroom and handle a docket. And he said, how many of y'all have actually talked with members of the judiciary here local, or not members of the judiciary, members of the legal community here? How many of y'all have talked to people at the state level in the legal community? And kind of going up the chain of judges all the way up to the state Supreme Court. How many of y'all have discussed this with them? Because he said, I'm really afraid that y'all are going into this vote that is, I think, a lot more important than y'all realize without all the information that you need. He didn't make an endorsement for anybody. He didn't unendorse anybody. As I was sitting there, I kept waiting for him to say, y'all don't need to vote for Mark Patey, because that's what it sounded like he was kind of angling toward. But he never said that. But it was pretty much, hey, you need to talk to the people who know about this before you start voting on it.
And that leads me to something else, because I do know there were some commissioners who maybe wanted to table the vote. Was that right? Do you remember? Like, I know Commissioner Abernathy, I believe, was one who said, "Have we done enough, or can we have some more time to do this?"
Mm-hmm.
The reason I brought up Roy Morgan is because he's a judge. He's done this job.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so it stands to reason that someone without any, and I don't know what his political affiliation is. I don't even know if he mentioned it. And I think the point of what he was saying is that should be, I don't know if irrelevance the right word in this situation, but the most important thing is you get this right from an experience standpoint and the person who's going to do this job to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's what he was trying to get at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if, I mean, he never just came right out. Like I said, he never came right out and said, don't vote for this person or vote for this person. You just need to get the best advice you can. And just hearing from other people on the commission who they are voting for, and they think you should vote with them, is not the best info to go on.
Do you, and I'm not saying you personally, I mean, you've covered this. Do you think that, based on your experience, do you think that happened or happens? Like,
yeah.
It is.
I mean,
that was quick. Yes.
I can tell you. I mean, the first person that I heard that had applied for this position, well, the first one that I knew for sure that had applied for it was Patey, because he's been now at the last 3 county commission meetings. And the first one he was at in March, it didn't even occur to me, he's here already campaigning for the judge position. I thought he was just there just being a good citizen. Or maybe they were going to vote on a rezoning close to his house or something like that. That's usually why citizens show up to one of those county commission meetings. Am I rocking too much? I'm sorry. Well, if anybody's watching and they get seasick, that's my bad. But and then the next one that I heard was Corley, and I started hearing that there was a contingent of commissioners that were kind of getting behind him, of at least between 3 and 5 commissioners who were behind him. And Gary Deaton was vocally in support of Corley from the beginning, including in that meeting that day. Now he voted for Patey. No, I don't think he did. I think he did. He was one of the 7 who voted for Corley. Yes, he was. And so I don't feel bad pointing him out. But if there were 2 more or 4 more, I've got it on pretty good authority that at least one of those was going with Corley simply because Deaton was voting for Corley. And he trusted Deaton's judgment. And I'm not saying that's good or that's bad, but I think Judge Morgan was just saying, hey, you need better information than just simply who Commissioner Deaton's voting for to make your pick. And I'm just asking you to make sure you do your due diligence before you cast this vote.
These are big decisions, right? Especially these positions that are filled before an election, right? Like even if it is a school board member, a judge, whatever it is the county commission is voting on, they should do their due diligence, because this isn't a thing where the general population gets to, come to a voting booth, make their pick based on whatever research they've done. The county commission's elected officials, elected to represent their districts. So this is a big deal. And I think it does bother me a little bit that there was a commissioner who's like, I'm just going to vote the way this guy votes because I trust it. Like, no, you got elected. Your job is to do your homework and to make the best decision, either that you think is right for your constituents or what they wanted you to vote for. And I know people don't keep up with it in real time as quickly as that, but still, I don't know. That's kind of hard for me to swallow. I think you have a big responsibility if you're an elected official, even if it's just on the local level.
Yeah. Well, and let's just say worst case scenario happens and Patey is a bad judge, and I'm not saying he's going to be a good one or a bad one. I don't even know if I'll ever sit in his courtroom. I may go down there Monday morning for his swearing in, and then Hopefully that would be the last time I'm in there. I hope I'm never called. But if he is a bad judge, he's going to be up for re-election in less than a year. So, or at least the primary will be in less than a year. So, I mean, he's definitely going to be the judge until August 31st of 2006. If he's not doing a good job, then run somebody against him. I have been told that it's often you don't see a lot of challenged elections for this seat because it has to be an attorney to run for the seat or somebody with a law degree. Well, most people who have law degrees are usually what? Lawyers.
Lawyers.
Any lawyer who's going to try to get that seat is going to be practicing law in Mark Patey's courtroom, or they want to run the risk of losing cases in Patey's courtroom by running against him in an election. And then if you lose and you're spending the next 4 years arguing cases in his courtroom, do you want to run the risk of this guy tried to get me to lose my job when he ran against me back in 2026? He's going to lose every case until I'm gone or until he quits. So I don't know if anybody will run against him, but if things get bad enough, I would hope that at least one person would raise their hand and be like, yeah, I'll do it.
I feel like even the people who are up for it I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they'll just throw their hat in it again, right? I mean, they could do that. But I guess that goes back to what you were saying. Free's a lawyer, Milam's a lawyer, Corley is not.
Yeah, and the person I was talking to about it said, yeah, I could see Corley doing it because he's not a lawyer. But if it is Corley and he continues serving as the chief of Jackson Police, do we have a repeat situation between Patey and JPD that we've had for the last couple of years between Judge Harvey and Tennessee Highway Patrol? So
where you getting stuff thrown out is what you're saying.
Right? Or it's just very hard to win a prosecution or it feels like it's hard to win a prosecution just because of recent history.
Gotcha. Well, one thing that I found encouraging about this is you wrote a really good op-ed about the problem with the two-party system or the caucuses, or I forgot how you worded it exactly, and we're not going to dive all the way back into that. We talked a lot about that on the last episode.
And we'll probably talk about it again next year.
But it was encouraging that some people broke off from that. I'll tip my hat to Gary Deaton, which, is a rare thing for me to do. But if Tom Corley was the person he thought was best for the job, him splitting with the caucus to do that is exactly what he should have done. So that's great. And I think we need more of that. And it's a better representative government when things happen that way. One more thing with county commission. I don't have anything to add to this. If you do, great. Mayor Massey got his 2% raise for, it's not vice mayor. I forgot her title.
Her official title is HR director, but he has added deputy mayor to her job description.
And her name is escaping me now. That is
Terica Smith.
Terica Smith. That's right. Okay.
She was like a year ahead of you at JCM, Gabe. Come on.
Dude, I didn't know a lot of people at JCM.
There were 3,000 people there, dude.
It was a big school. It was a big school, and I was an idiot for most of it. So I'm good for AJ. That was, I don't have a lot to add for that. She got it. Do you have anything to add?
Well, one, I think she was actually a year behind you. I don't want to age her too much. But also, yeah, I mean, I think we did discuss, kind of update that story because it was on Friday that week that the budget committee approved it. So, yeah, we'll, at the end of the meeting after it got approved, I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last video. I wasn't there. I've just been told this, that apparently Mayor Massey told the committee, thank you, gentlemen. And I'm sure we will disagree about something in the future at some point, but it won't be this. Thank you very much.
It's a win all the way around, right? County's not broke because of this. Terica gets a raise. Mayor Massey's happy. Win, win, win. Maybe?
Gary Deaton wasn't happy, but...
Win, 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 win.
Stop it.
It's 4 wins.
Stop it.
I'm sorry. Okay. It's the Michael Scott conflict resolution school I went to. Okay. On a more serious topic, there was an article in the middle of last week's edition. A West Tennessee law enforcement officer's memories were honored at a ceremony. And there's a picture of General Pickens speaking. I don't know if he was like the main speaker.
Yeah, he was the key.
Or he was and so, thank goodness I don't at least hear of a lot of officers dying in the line of duty in Jackson. But obviously in West Tennessee, we've had several, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of, is this the course of West Tennessee's history or is there a certain amount of years?
Yeah, okay. This is going back to, well, not all the way back to when Tennessee became a state, but the first one that they recognized was like in the 1840s. Obviously, no one in that officer's immediate family was there to put a rose into the wreath for him. it was like 1830s, 1850s, and the next was like 1860s. And it wasn't just Jackson, Madison County either. It was all throughout West Tennessee. There was some McNairy County, some Crockett County, Ovine County. I remember those being listed specifically. And it wasn't just, it was law enforcement in general. So we're talking THP, various county sheriffs, various municipal police, anybody who does law enforcement. There was even one who was an assistant district attorney serving in, I think, Mobile, Alabama. If not Mobile, it was somewhere down that way, who was from here. I don't have the program in front of me. I think within about 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, while serving, he had a heart attack and died while on the job. But because he's from here, they went ahead and put him on the list of people being recognized. So very somber ceremony. And I'll go ahead and say it's for the ones who are recent enough to have immediate family members there, and just seeing a widow or a grown person who may have been a child when their father or mother died in the line of duty, or definitely somebody recent. The most recent one from Jackson being Sergeant Oden, who was the city court bailiff who had a heart attack January of 24. Just as we're sitting there in the training center at the sheriff's department, it got a little dusty in there as we were just watching the families recognize their dear departed that gave their lives while serving the public. So glad that our local law enforcement entities are willing to do that to preserve these men and women's legacies.
I have such a great appreciation for law enforcement officers. I think I have my issues with the criminal justice system, but I think that can be held here in one hand, and then a great appreciation for the men and women who have to do the day-to-day, because I cannot imagine how challenging that would be. I've made the comparison often. And it's honestly like I hope if there is a police officer or law enforcement officer watching this that they don't get offended. But I've compared the profession of teaching in a lot of ways in a classroom to law enforcement on the ground. And only for the simple fact of like the bureaucracy of the systems that each of them are in. There's a lot of things that are put down on their shoulders by the systems that they are in that they don't really have any control over. They just got to do the hardest work of that system, right? At sometimes the lowest level of that system. And, they're the ones that are getting their hands dirty and obviously putting their lives in danger to protect the community. So I think my appreciation for officers has grown a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. And I think there are a lot of, like I said, narratives about the criminal justice system, and a lot are true. And I think you can have your concerns about that on one hand, but then at the same time, you can really very much respect the people who are having to do that job, because that job is hard and that job is so important in every community just to keep things as safe as they can.
Yeah, and it's not just, getting in a car and riding around town, seeing who's speeding or running red lights and waiting on a bank to get robbed or a wreck to happen to show up. But even with the wrecks happen, if you're a policeman and you're the first one to show up at a wreck before EMS or fire or whatever, you're the one saying, okay, what do we have here? Do we have anybody thrown out? And if they are thrown out or they're stuck in there, is the vehicle on fire? And if it is, got to get them out. Or anyone who has read enough of my columns or has listened to me on radio or on podcasts before, you all know that I'm involved in foster care. And DCS may say, hey, we need to take children out of this home. But it's not a DCS agent who is physically going into the home and getting them out 99% of the time. It is our law enforcement officers, whether it's sheriff or police, having to go and informing the parents, or the parents have been charged with a crime and going to jail. And if there's nowhere for that child to go, they're the ones that have to get that child, get up all its his or her belongings that they can. Usually they're put in a trash bag, put in the back of a car with them, or put in the back of a vehicle owned by a DCS worker that's waiting outside, and just hope that you don't do anything that's going to scar these kids for life to make them hate or fear law enforcement for the rest of their lives because of something that had nothing to do or very little to do with them, that they did not cause at all whatsoever. So, yeah, like you said, there's a lot put on law enforcement more than just catching bad guys and writing tickets. So thanks to all y'all who go out and do that.
And just anecdotally, I've had to call on law enforcement in the last year and a half, 2 or 3 times actually. And I'm not a person that calls the police like ever, except obviously when cars are broken into or windows are smashed in cars. But they have been super responsive. They've called me back to update me on investigations without me having to call them. So they're doing great. They're keeping people from sleeping by Campbell Lake. I mean, I don't know what else we can ask them to do. Honestly. Kidding about the last part. They're doing great. Last piece from the May 22nd edition before we move to the current news. Man, it seems like Amy McDonald is the most resilient person, I think, in like that I've been reading about lately in the Jackson Post. So Amy McDonald, she is the Tennessee Homeless Solutions Director. She has been in the news a lot in the last year. Just because all of this homeless stuff really started, like the tension of it really started a year ago, just over a year ago, and culminated in this budget season for city council last year. And then, obviously, it's been a gradual step by step to where, a few months ago, now there's no homeless shelter at all. We're not building it. I think the last time we discussed Amy, she was like, I don't know what I'm going to, how I'm going to serve homeless people in Jackson, but I'm going to think of something. And so, here we are. Mm-hmm. Homeless Service Center coming to downtown. I'm going to read a couple of things from this, and then I'm going to let you expound on that a bit.
Good, because I don't remember what I wrote.
Okay. So Amy McDonald announced they signed a lease last week for a supportive services center on the eastern side of downtown. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say exactly where, but I'm going to ask you exactly where in a minute.
419 Baltimore Street, I think, is the address. It's close to First United Methodist Church. I know that.
Perfect. That's actually a good spot. All right. Yeah. So Amy says this won't be a shelter where 20 to 25 men can live for 3 months while receiving help and services to get back on their feet like we had planned, but it will provide a lot of the services we wanted to provide from them from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., 7 days a week. So they're going to have case management, some healthcare, mental health, substance abuse, skills training, and providing lunch with meals delivered from RIFA. They're going to staff the facility, and volunteers will be much needed. It's going to be, they're going to offer different workshops aimed at mental health, substance abuse, and primary care. And they're also working with the library on employment training. So there's also going to be a job readiness class that can be done in 2 or 3 weeks. So basically, it sounds like she's trying to do everything she can, or THS can do from the hours of 9 to 5 to help prepare these men and women to try to get some momentum and gain some skills to where they can, I don't know if catapult's the right word, but can propel them maybe back into...
Parlay it into self-sufficiency.
There you go. Parlay it into self-sufficiency. So do you have anything to add? I know when you talked to her, did she seem, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, resilient, I don't know, determined? What was her general demeanor?
She was frustrated in April when we talked after the CRA didn't even make a motion on the 4th. Was it the 4th? Yeah, it was the 4th. Yeah. Try at a homeless shelter. But I'll reference you back to, I think, October at the city council agenda review. She was there and she spoke. And while she spoke, she kind of outlined, because I ran a picture of her in front of the whiteboard speaking that you saw today has since been taken down. That was a change in the last month. But she listed all the steps of somebody on the streets with nowhere to go to self-sufficiency. And she said, we've got every step covered except for one. Right in the center. That is somewhere to go off the streets that's not couch surfing for quote unquote permanent housing. And permanent housing meaning just simply where you're going to be for the foreseeable future. And that's what the homeless shelter would have provided, in addition to being the primary place for a number of the steps on either side of that. But she now has a one-stop shop for all those services. They're just not spending the night for 90 nights. So yeah, she's still helping, still getting them services. And I'll even say, I know we've got somebody watching because I received a text message where they said, hey, I'm watching and talking about the homeless. And they said, they were asking, how is this at all different from one of its neighbors around the corner, Area Relief Ministries? And I don't think Area Relief Ministries is offering the training and the help to get back on your feet. They are offering services, but I don't think they're offering as many services. And, like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with OSHA training at the sheriff's office for inmates. I think there's something similar going on at the, and it may not be OSHA, but certification for different kind of jobs for anybody that wants that training. That's going to be available at this thing. So
I didn't see a date that they would open in there. Do you know when that's going to start?
She didn't give me that. I mean, all she said was as soon as we can. but there are some renovations that need to be done. So I imagine that's going to take a few weeks, if not 2 or 3 months.
Well, I will say this: I have every intention of volunteering there when they do open. Because I was wondering as I was reading through this article, I'm like, man, like how are they going to staff that? And then of course I got to the quote where it says, "We'll staff it, and volunteers will be much needed." You got to think anything like that, you will need community members to come in, and so
Right.
hey, hats off to Amy McDonald, man. I think I'm going to throw her name in there for you to consider for your Jackson Post Person of the Year for next year. Just saying, I'm just going to throw that out there.
She classifies Newsmaker of the Year, so we'd have
Newsmaker. Okay.
And I was actually pondering that tonight because one person that was in the room tonight was kind of crossing my mind as possible Newsmaker of the Year.
Chuck Walker?
Yes, definitely Chuck Walker.
Just kidding.
That's Talker of the Year.
You know what? Listen to this. You might have noticed this, who I was sitting beside. Not Chuck. Chuck was on my left. Do you see who was on my right?
Yeah, the one who's on my left.
Newsmaker of the Year, right?
Person of the Year.
Person of the Year. God,
Charlie Rolfing wasn't making news last year.
He was Person of the Year.
Yeah.
Buddy, we were sharing the budget. We were poking fun at Larry Lowrance. We were bonding. I was like, look at this. Like, who would have thought?
Larry Lowrance, a great unifier.
Yes, I had it was enjoyable. I had an enjoyable experience, and we'll get to that in a minute. All right, moving on to this week's edition that we usually cover on Sunday nights. I will be out of town, so we're doing this early. It's also very convenient because you and I attended this agenda review tonight, earlier tonight. But first things first, on the front page of this is the story I wrote about Ashley Akerson, who is starting a nonprofit called Dreamers and Makers. And I don't know Ashley well. I had an hour-long conversation with her, podcast that will be on this YouTube channel tomorrow, actually, at 8 a.m. And got to know her a lot and sort of heard what her passion is. And her passion is to bring not just arts, but community to middle school kids. It's open to anybody, but I think there is going to be a focus on maybe downtown East Jackson to involve kids after school in a productive and constructive program that exposes them to art, culinary skills, and honestly, more importantly, the bigger idea of this is just having a sort of a communal atmosphere 4 afternoons a week. She's going to provide transportation. She's raised over $10,000 Kickstarter already to get this going. This is such a cool thing because, as I mentioned in the story, arts programs since 2010, I believe is what I said, they've been cut federally for by 35%. At the state level, the average is a little bit higher than that. So you combine those two things, you know, fine arts in public education has kind of been gutted the last 15 years. And I think I mentioned the systems of things earlier, and public education is a system right now that I think does need some tweaks. Tweaks is probably just an understated word at this point, but they've taken out a lot of humanities from public education, really focusing on academics, which I get, that's important, but you can't have a well-rounded person without some of these other things. And I think that's what Ashley is trying to do. So I'm not going to spoil a lot of what the story is, but she's doing really good things. So it's funny because I think the news oftentimes can lean toward the negative, but a lot of the stuff we've talked about so far is actually really positive stuff. Like, there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good things in Jackson. Ashley's one of those. Check that story out. Again, I don't want to spoil a lot of it, but this is a big leap for her, what she's doing. She's kind of doing this. She's going to have a lot of support from the community, but this is her deal, and she's kind of putting herself out there on her own, and it's for a very good cause. Check it out. I'm excited that it's there, and I was excited to write it about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you writing it for us because this definitely does not go in one of the 3 major categories of content for the Jackson Post. And those 3 categories that we've mentioned before are scandal, smut, and sports. This is none of those.
None.
But and I'm not a big arts person, but over the last few years since I've left sports and done news coverage, just like I've had my eyes open to how government works, I've also had my eyes open to there truly is, at least in this town, a segment of the population who has a genuine appreciation and love for the arts and see it as something that's necessary for the quality of life in Jackson, and not just Jackson, but Madison County and all of rural West Tennessee. And a lot of those same people are willing to do what they need to do to actually support with more than just thoughts, prayers, and positive words, those artists who continue to keep doing what they love to do, what they feel like they're called to do, which is to create art. So, yeah, appreciate you knocking that one out for me.
You're welcome. One more thing that's really cool about this I didn't mention, I think obviously that there's the art aspect, but the culinary aspect as well is like every day they will prepare a meal together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the group will. So they will learn how to cook. They will learn how to cook meals that are, obviously that taste good, but that are healthy. And that I think there is like a lot of value in preparing a meal together, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't say biblical, but it can be a spiritual act, right?
Mm-hmm.
This meal preparation together and dining together, things like that. So she's really doing some good things there.
Yeah.
On to a more depressing subject, and that is we had a rough weekend in Jackson last weekend. But I also think it sort of ties in to what Ashley's trying to do. And I can say this, I know I teach at JCM High School. I work at JCM High School. And I hear kids all the time saying, we just want something to do. There's just not a lot to do for us in Jackson.
Right.
And I've got a teenage daughter who's about to go to college. There's just not a lot for teenagers to do in Jackson. And so hats off to Ashley for trying to, fill that void. But when there aren't a lot of constructive things to do for teenagers in Jackson are going to find things to do. And oftentimes they can fall into situations that aren't positive. And we had 2 shootings this weekend. Both of them did not involve teenagers. One did. And one was at Kate Campbell, where I believe 7 people were shot. No fatalities at Kate Campbell, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
6 of the 7, I believe, were treated and released. So do you know... The article in this week's edition says progress made in 2 weekend shooting investigations.
Right.
Do we know where we are on those investigations, or they're still gathering information?
The latest, as of yesterday during a press conference, a person of interest had been identified in the Old Hickory Boulevard shooting. Now, as far as one is Kate Campbell, I think they're still doing interviews and they're still asking for some of the public's help. According to Chief Tom Corley, I think they said more than 100 people were observed at the park before the shooting because they were called out there for a separate complaint, separate issue or whatever a little while before the shooting happened. But they're still asking for some help. And for whatever reason, there are some cases where JPD don't get a lot of help from quote unquote witnesses of these shootings. And, whether it be, for fear of retaliation, if it's a gang type situation or something like that, there's not a lot of people who feel comfortable helping the investigation along. So they've got to dig a little deeper and do that deeper digging a little quicker before evidence has time to fade or before the smoke clears so that they can see where the smoke was coming from. But they are still seeking the public's help on that.
Tying this to, there was a column that Sabrina Parker wrote that was on the following page of this week's edition. Her son was a victim of a shooting 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Was killed in North Highland. I actually taught her son at Northeast. Gosh, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I know Sabrina personally. And I think it's interesting. Is probably not the right word. I'm trying to think of an adjective to describe this. I think it's maybe illuminating to see what the other side of that looks like when you have a victim's parent or someone close to the victim sort of detail their experience on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And her experience wasn't a good one with law enforcement. In her mind, there wasn't a lot of transparency. The investigation still hasn't been solved, and I think in her mind, there were things that she thought should have been done that weren't done. Mm-hmm. Did she just submit this to you, or did you do an interview with her?
No, it should have her byline on it.
I see that right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she wrote it. It's in first person. And I'll be honest with you, I went back and forth on whether or not to put this on the opinion page, but I elected not to because while there are some flashes of opinion in there, just based on her perspective, she's still just kind of giving her observances. And I thought about just kind of taking this as a press release and almost rewriting it in third person, but I didn't. This is a grieving mother, and I didn't want to strip away any of this grieving mother's words, talking about the experience of having lost her son and then dealing with her frustrations with the criminal justice system and trying to solve his murder. Now, am I throwing accusations personally at any of the three entities that she mentioned in her story? No, I'm just letting her give her side. I did contact all three and say, "Hey, heads up, this is coming. if y'all feel the need to give a rebuttal or whatever, let me know." All three just kind of said no. She's a grieving mother. I mean, she's already expressed her frustrations to them. So I imagine if they read it, they're probably not going to read anything they haven't heard before. So, and all three are compassionate toward her. They feel bad for her. And Chief Corley, being the chief of the investigating agency, he'd love to see an arrest made, and Attorney General Pickens would love to prosecute and get a conviction. They don't speak on ongoing investigations, so I can't really comment more than that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such thing as closure. I know there's the opposite of that, where things are so open and you don't have answers that you are just dying to get something because you think you might find that whatever that closure is. So I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a parent, to lose a child and not have any answers.
Right.
Even if getting those answers doesn't change anything, right? It still may allow you to try to make some logical sense of what happened. Without that, you just can't, you're just guessing, right?
Yeah.
You have theories. She has her own theories in this piece that she mentions. So yeah, I'm glad that you ran it like you did in first person, because I think that's part of the process, is telling stories, telling her story and getting that out there, because I cannot, and I'm really happy to hear you say that the three entities that she mentioned are all just compassionate towards her as well, because this is a situation where like I said, I can't imagine it. And like I said, I know Sabrina personally. I haven't talked to her in a year or two. But I actually did a podcast with her about this a couple of years ago when I was at the radio station.
Yeah.
And so, just to see this again, it's heartbreaking, because she's still out there looking and fighting. So for all involved, hopefully something can be resolved in this situation.
And also not just her, but for anybody who has lost a loved one in a similar situation, if we're assuming that the killer is a Jackson resident, I mean, you go to Walmart and, who all's in this building? Is my son's killer in this building right now? Or a restaurant or something. And I don't want to imagine what that would be like.
I can't imagine. It's just one of those things. I don't know what I would do either. Probably be writing something very similar to what she wrote, honestly. All right, yeah. We are at the last story that we will probably spend most of the time on, and
another hour and a half.
The tax increase that was proposed by Mayor Conger over the weekend, essentially. Okay, so Sunday morning, apparently, was it Sunday morning? You wake up on social media and he's made a post. Which, first of all, I think we can address this. It got a lot of pushback, not because he was proposing raising taxes, which freaks everybody out, especially in West Tennessee. But he also made it before he acknowledged the shootings that we just mentioned at Kate Campbell, and specifically Kate Campbell and Old Hickory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I don't think that's a big deal. He explained it in his live yesterday that this was a scheduled post. He apologized. He owned it. I think the people who were upset at that were just probably the same people that were super upset about the taxes, and they were looking for something else to pick at. I understand why they would pick at it. I'm just saying I don't think it's that huge of a deal. So
if I can just add a little unsolicited,
yes, go for it,
commentary on that point too. I mean, he said exactly what I thought it was. He scheduled it Friday. The first shooting on Saturday happened a little before 8 o'clock. The second shooting happened like just before 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. So there wasn't a lot of awake time before it was scheduled to go out to even consider that. And then he had forgotten about it and didn't realize until his notifications started going up. But even if you don't consider the shootings, if I'm a member of Conger's PR team And believe it or not, some people think I am, but I'm not. My salary, I don't have a salary that's up for debate in the budget discussions.
You better be lying. People wanting to cut it.
But my question would have been, why are we scheduling this for Sunday on Memorial Day weekend? What do we gain by putting it out there on Sunday that we wouldn't have on Tuesday when as everybody's going back to work, or maybe even Monday evening about 6 o'clock after everybody's kind of it's kind of well, I don't want to compare it to another holiday, but most of the time, with the exception of New Year's Eve, most holidays are winding down by evening time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, the holiday, it's not over, but it sort of is. Whereas, up until at least lunchtime on Memorial Day, it's like, oh, we're right in the thick of Memorial Day. Let it calm down a little bit. But yeah, it's not the worst decision Conger's ever made, but I think we've already spent too much time on it. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Okay. I have a theory. Can I just say my theory? Sometimes when you post things on social media on Sunday, they just don't get a lot of hits because people aren't seeing them. So if I was going to announce a tax increase proposal and I wanted to be public about it, but I also was like, nobody's going to like this, I would schedule it for Sunday morning. That's what I would do, honestly.
So here is the best time to do that, and government already does this. Didn't you watch The West Wing?
No, never watched The West Wing.
I thought you did. A lot of my other liberal friends did. I'm actually a big fan of that show.
You liberal?
Yes, I'm a big bleeding heart liberal. And there were actually a couple of episodes framed around the fact that when the president had to send a press release about something that he didn't want to send a press release about, when did he send it out? 4:55 p.m. on Friday.
Okay. That's a good one.
Not a lot of people are looking at Facebook when they're headed out for the weekend. So, except for me. But I have no life other than to just changing diapers and eating Little Caesars pizza on Friday night. So,
and explaining what the phrase "tongue in cheek" means in a comment.
Oh no, that's done on the Tuesday after Memorial Day. We'll get.
Oh, that's Tuesday. Okay, we'll get to that then. All right. So here is what Mayor Conger proposed in this post. Okay, 2 key changes. And here's where the semantics come into play. He says 2 key changes to support the continued growth and improvement of our city. Right? Mm-hmm. Good positive spin there. That is an adjustment, not an increase, just an adjustment to the property tax rate, right, of 1.6114 to $1.85, right? Mm-hmm. An increase in the city vehicle sticker fee to $50. And previously it was what?
Oh, well, 25? It is 25 right now. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Is 25. Okay. It's also funny how this gets worded because I love this. I like playing with words myself. An adjustment to the property tax rate. Look, it's a tax increase. It is what it is. But then when I saw another social media post of someone who ran for mayor a couple years ago and might be considering another run for mayor in 2027 because the tax increase of the sticker fee was not $25. It was a 100% tax increase. So, man, right? We love to play with words. So if you don't like this, you're going to use 100% tax increase. Be quiet. It's $25. I know nobody likes it, but calm down. Okay. An adjustment's just an increase. All right. So let's just get all of these semantics out of the way.
Because I think that both sides of that too.
Thank you. Yes. But I mean, like, come on. We're not dumb. We're not dumb. Maybe we are. I don't know, because I saw a lot of people freaking out about 100%. It's $25. Continuing on. People flipped out. I'm not on Facebook. It's off my phone, but I will get on a couple times a week. And every time I would just sort of get on, that's what was at the top of my feed because more people were commenting. It just kept like repeating and people were hot. So I was pretty excited about this agenda review that we attended tonight because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was pleasantly surprised at the way this unfolded, at least what I saw. Mm-hmm. So here's where we are. The reason Mayor Conger wants to adjust the tax rate is because we're looking at are we in a deficit again this year, possibly for the budget? Is that?
Yeah, 3.6 was the number that was thrown out last week at the previous work session.
So 3.7 last year, what was it? Very similar situation.
I don't think it was quite this much, but I think it was in the high 2s, maybe a little over 3, but yeah, it was a fairly close number.
So sort of setting the stage for where we are. And Councilman Donnell brought this up tonight, which I thought everybody would just know this. It's common sense. Like we all know inflation has been happening since COVID.
Right.
It has died down a bit, but it's still there's still inflation. It's just not the same as a high rate. So prices are up on everything. In my mind, to me, logic tells me that if everything else is getting expensive, running a city also is going to get more expensive. So you've got to find ways to pay for these costs that are rising for all the departments and everything else that, goes into running a community. So the tax increase to me was not surprising. It just seems like it's inevitable. At some point, this is going to happen. I think most people don't ever want it to happen and freak out when they see it proposed. And I understand that. So now there are two sides to this is, okay, how do we close this gap of a deficit? Do we increase taxes, which again, I feel is inevitable? Or the other side says, we got to trim the fat, bring Doge in here or whatever else and just start cutting stuff. Mm-hmm. So this all leads up to the agenda review tonight. Mm-hmm. And you wrote an op-ed that we'll get to in a minute, but as you've been following this since Sunday, what are some things that you've seen? And you can even lead into to talk about what we saw tonight at the agenda review as well.
Well, I mean, the main thing that I've seen in between the two work sessions, and also we'll just go ahead and call tonight's meeting agenda review because the second part of the meeting officially was agenda review, but at 4:00 a work session started. We're just going to call it agenda review. But yeah, between the work session last week and the agenda review tonight, the main thing that I saw was the reaction of people to the story that I put up last Thursday night. I think it shared Friday morning after the meeting where a tax adjustment was first mentioned. And then the reaction to that, the reaction to others who posted screenshots of the story, and the reaction to those, the reaction of some of the city council people, particularly one, to the reaction to the proposal, the reaction to Conger's proposal, and 99% at least obviously is against it. I mean, who among us is going to be like, you know what? I am bringing home way too much money. City, take another 24 cents of property tax out of my paycheck, please. So there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of accusations against the mayor and city government in general, even the council. I've seen a few, maybe one or two, where they think that anyone who votes for this tax increase is going to get some kind of kickback from Mayor Conger if it passes.
Can I stop you right there? People that are saying that, like, what do they have any tangible proof that this has happened before, will happen again, or is this just like conspiracy theory? A plus B plus C might equal D down the road.
The ones that have the more extreme theories or assumptions probably voted for Ray Condry 2 years ago, or Daryl Hubbard, or Lisa Lyons, or Jerry Woods. Is it Jerry Woods? Yes. I know who he is. I just get him and Jerry West mixed up, and I'm like, which one played for the Lakers? But yeah, Dr. Woods. And so they're able to kind of take the approach of I told you so. But a lot of people who have been strong supporters of Congers in 19 when he was first elected mayor and in 23 when he was reelected, they don't like it either. Conger said himself during his live yesterday, he don't like it. But he feels like this is the necessary thing to make up for this $3.6 million shortfall. Is it necessary? There are definitely a lot of people, two people that I sat next to tonight, who don't think it is, but it is the easiest. If you don't feel like you can cut, then just try to cut expenses, then just try to bring in more revenue. How do you bring in more revenue? Well, if you can't just automatically drop another 20,000 people inside Jackson City limits overnight, then you got to raise taxes. And so the proposal that, according to Conger, that he sent out to the council members on Friday and then sent out Sunday morning on the Facebooks was we're going to go from 61.6114 to 1.85, and we are going to double your city sticker fee, but that's double the amount going to roads. So yeah, I mean, he explained it, gave the reasoning for it, and the potential benefits, and a lot of people disagreeing with it.
A couple of things too. So also in this, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there is I don't know if line item is the right word, but there is a separate bucket within that's going to be specifically reserved for paving or road work. Is that right?
Yeah, if this new budget were to pass, this tax increase would be for the new budget. So if this budget were to pass with the tax adjustment increase, they would create essentially a new line in the budget called street capital. And Candace Busby from the city council, I forget what number what district she is, but she's further up north. She's the one that asked. She's like, why do we need this new fund? Like, is it just simpler to say, hey, all this money is going into this fund, and because it's called street capital, it's pretty self-explanatory what it's going to do? Are you using that to? Are you hoping that that's going to justify the tax increase? Her question isn't a bad one, because I mean the city of Jackson has existed for nearly 200 years without a street capital line item in its budget. Why do we all of a sudden need one now? But yeah, if I'm John Doe Jackson wanting to find out, hey, how much my money is going towards streets, well, I can at least look at that line item, and I don't think that every single dollar that's going to be used on streets is going to be coming from that fund. But at least I know if there's $4 million in that fund, okay, that's $4 million we've got to spend on streets.
I think I was a little bit confused at Councilwoman Busby's not pushback against that, but roads seems to be, especially 2 years ago when the election was happening, like a lot of the people from the group that endorsed her complained so much about roads, and not even just them, but that's what you see, or what I saw most of on social media. Our roads are terrible. Our roads are, when are we going to pave these roads? Like, that's what I see most of the time when people are complaining about how much money the city has or the way it spends the money. So whenever I heard them say that, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, they're saying, hey, here is the amount of money that we have specifically for this. So nobody can question if we're wasting too much money on something else. This is where it's coming from. So I honestly thought that would just appease people who might have had problems with that in the past. Mm-hmm. So I got it. I was just a little bit surprised at the pushback. I also understand her point, as in, like, is this just a way to sort of push this through and, not make people feel a little bit better about it? So I understand both, but I thought if we want more transparency, like, that's a step towards more transparency.
Right.
In my mind. Okay, so getting to the workshop part. Mm-hmm. From where I was sitting, which was 2 seats down from you, most every council person, with the exception of Councilman Dodd, I believe, was like, absolutely no taxes. Nobody wants this. Councilman Dodd said, is there a way that we can sort of dip into the fund balance and then maybe do the sticker fee as well? The combination of the two, right?
Right.
And everybody else was like, we don't want it. And that, I was a little bit surprised by that. Were you surprised that everyone was like, nope?
I'm not surprised that there's been as many as there have been that said no to taxes. I mean, because just like nobody wants to pay for taxes, nobody wants to be the one who says, oh, yeah, I want to vote for a tax increase. I'm sorry, a tax adjustment. But and if we get into the opinion column from earlier this week,
we will.
To his credit, JP Stovall has not said, I'm not voting for a tax adjustment, or I am voting for a tax adjustment. He just has said, I don't want to. So explain it to me why I should if I'm going to. So that is I think that's the general attitude of most of them. Nobody is going to say, yes, let's do it. So it's, yeah, they're going to be closer to, yeah, we're not going to do it. But Richard Donnell was the one saying, yeah, I don't want to do it.
I think that's who surprised me. I'm not saying that I expected him to say yes. I don't know. That surprised me. Let me ask you this, and this is something else that surprised me. It doesn't seem like, from what the council members were saying, that the budget process is, I don't say organized very well.
Right.
They didn't seem to have a lot of idea about like what exactly was in it and the way that it was created.
Right.
And I know there was a lot of conversation about, we need to be starting this in January and building towards this. I was under the impression that they already did that. Is that not the case? Is this always just a last minute thing?
So when Budget Committee meets now, it is a lot of discussion about what is going on now and what could be coming up in the not too distant future. They don't really start talking about the actual year-long fiscal budget for the next fiscal year until after department heads turn in their budget request to Mayor Conger. And then they have budget hearings where the department heads discuss their request to Mayor Conger. with city council in the room as well. That happened this year on May 13th and 14th. So, and
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And I don't think they're I don't think they're discussing moving that process up any, although in years past, these have happened sometimes in April. I remember in 2020, I think these talks happened as late as June, but 2020 was a different year. They were dealing with some other things that year. But they are wanting to, essentially, they're like, okay, we don't want to vote for taxes this year because we don't want to shock our constituents with this tax raise this year, because we just now started talking about it last week. Literally, as I'm sitting here just talking with you, about 10:30 on Thursday night, we are at about 1 week and 4 hours since this was first mentioned. So what they are considering doing is, let's don't raise taxes. Let's do whatever we got to do to not raise taxes. And then we take the whole year to publicly discuss, not from Mayor Conger, but from the council. Hey, we did our budget. This is where we started. And then Marta Wallace said January. I was under the impression before she said January that this would start in July, with the first month of the fiscal year, maybe start in August after you've had the first month, and be like, okay, we're 1 month in. This is where we are in the budget. We're already a little bit ahead. We're already a little short. This is why. But hopefully we're going to get that fixed later on because of this reason or that reason or whatever. So that anybody who's been paying attention this whole time will know, okay, we were at this point in August. We were at this point in September. We were at this point in October. Then when you get to March and April, you're at this point, whatever point that is. So that a month later, when they start having these discussions about the 26-27 fiscal year budget, and they're talking about a tax increase, they have already brought it up, and it's not as big of a shock. And anything that they say to justify it is not a new issue or a new term, a new vocabulary word for them. They're already familiar with it, and you're not starting the conversation at square one. So, and Larry Lowrance suggested that Mayor Conger appoint a committee, and that whole committee be all the members of the city council. Well, I think there's already a committee. We call it the city council.
You know what? And I don't mean to interrupt, but there's something, I know Councilwoman Wallace said this, and I think Councilman Lawrence said this too, albeit in maybe a roundabout way. But essentially, it's what you were saying. Like, if we're going to do this, we need to let the public know why we're doing this. This is why we need to raise the tax rate X amount, right? Because I think it was Marta or somebody said, when you throw this on people out of nowhere and we don't know why, and there's already questions about, and we can get into maybe Councilwoman Busby's, like when she addressed the mayor in his office, I guess, and how much money's up there. People want to know, if we're going to have a tax increase, why do we need it? And I am in full agreement with Larry and Marta on this. If it is more, I don't say transparent, if it is more transparent and the process happens along the way, I think the public, I'm not saying nobody wants taxes, but I'm also one of the very few, I think, sure, do I want to pay a little bit more? Not really, personally, but I also see the value in what Mayor Conger is trying to do holistically. And so, like we talked about before we recorded, I think this really comes down. I don't know that it comes down to a dollars and cents thing as much as it does the philosophical idea about where an individual stands on what they believe city government should be, right? So if you think city government should only be bare bones, infrastructure, pave my roads, give me some law enforcement, make sure my house doesn't burn down, that's it, period, done, then yeah, you don't want a tax increase. But if you think government should provide, almost like I was talking about when I was talking about Ashley Akerson's program, if you want to provide a well-rounded community that values certain things that you may not get money back on. I know the phrase cost benefit analysis was used several times tonight in the meeting. Mm-hmm. It depends on how you look at government. I think that's the crux of this whole debate, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I think if people understood better what this money was being used for, then maybe they'd be more willing to consider it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, there's still, and I've talked to a few people the last couple of days that are just simply, Mayor Conger said last week, there's no smoking gun in the budget where there's an obvious cut that can be made. And those people who disagree say, yes, there is. You have 72% of your budget is salary. So either you have too many people, or people are getting paid too much, or you got a little bit of both. So do what you got to do. Cut whatever you got to cut. I think the stat that was shared tonight from, was it Busby, who said cities in Tennessee are typically between 60 and 70% salary, and Jackson is at 72. I thought that number would be a little lower. I thought it was more like between 50 and 60.
About statewide. But what
Yeah,
didn't somebody correct her on the 72? Wasn't it actually 69 or 70? Didn't Nathan say that or no? I thought that was corrected at some point.
that may have been.
Okay.
I'll have to, as I was sending out tweets and talking to the two who were sitting on either side of me, it's very possible that I missed
And I may be
saying that.
wrong. Yeah, but either way.
Yeah. So yeah, either way, it's, if Jackson's percentage of salary in its budget is within the range of normal, it's on the high range of normal. And so, so they're wanting Conger to look at that and be like, why don't you just kind of pull it back a little bit, just a smidge. So
at the end of this, and I had to cut out a little bit earlier, how did everything, because Tuesday's the big day, right? So Tuesday at 9 a.m., it's just a reading, correct? Like they've got to, and then
they've got to approve it on 2 readings, and we don't know for sure that they'll even approve it Tuesday. Right. So if they don't approve it Tuesday, then they're going to have, if they're going to meet the June 30th deadline to have this thing approved, they're going to have, they know right now they're going to have 1 special called meeting. They may need 2.
I know that Councilman Donnell suggested that they go with the budget, the one that they had sort of worked out before Mayor Conger added the tax increases. Where did they land on that? Which one are they going to propose for the reading?
I imagine both will get proposed.
Okay.
And I don't know if they'll just have one at a time brought up, and the first one that they vote on that gets 5 votes is the winning proposal, or if they put them all up at the same time and they vote on and whichever one gets the most votes out of that, or if they do like county commission, if they have 4 options, they vote on all 4, but none of them get 5, which would be a majority of the 9 total votes. They knock out the 4th place one and then vote on the 3. It's not cut and dry that it's going to be the same as county commission, because county government is, the state will tell the county governments how they need to run their business and their government. But for whatever reason, municipalities don't have that as much of a tie to how the state tells them to do it. They just say, the state just tells them the parameters of how they're supposed to do things. They just got to do them within those parameters. But I think that and I'm just thinking in similar cases, and nothing specific is coming to mind, but I'm thinking what they'll do is they'll be like, okay, Johnny died today, proposed $25 increase on city stickers. Let's do nothing with property tax. Let's just keep it where it is. But whatever we need to make up the shortfall after the sticker increase, then we'll just take that out of fund balance. And then the other proposal is what Donnell said, don't raise anything, let's just take it all out of fund balance.
So if they took it all out of fund balance, and I don't know if I heard this, I know City Recorder Nathan, what's Nathan's last name?
Reed.
He was saying that this 15% threshold, you don't want to get close to that, because then the state, right, like you get on the state's radar. If they barred it all from the fund balance, did we ever figure out like what percentage that would take us to? Like, does that make sense?
Well, I've got to get that clarified, because
Okay.
last week the number that was put out there as the current total for fund balance right now is a little more than 21 million. Tonight, the way that I understood it, it was as if they were talking about fund balance being down to 18 million.
That's what I heard too.
So if that's the case, if it's 18, then taking out 3.6 million would put them right at possibly even
15.
below that 15% threshold.
So what is the budget? Is it 100 million? I mean, is it a flat 100 million?
It's not a flat. It's like 10.
Okay.
I want to say the revenue is like either somewhere between 99 and 101, and then the expenses are 3.6 more than whatever revenue is, or projected revenue.
And by the way, the budget is online, right? Like it is there so people can see it. I wish we had a link we could put up here if you want to look at it. I think that would help people, honestly.
Well, I don't think that they put up the proposed budget for next year up yet, but
they have not. Chuck shared something tonight. Was it
He did?
Yeah,
Okay.
that
All
Kenny
right.
told him about as well, but not to get too
Well,
much off topic. But
no, what they shared tonight, because the city sent out a press release like 3:30 before the 4 o'clock meeting started, was it's a new finance portal on the website where you can see the current, but and I actually looked at it before we came on here. You can see the budget all the way back to 22. But all that's on that page right now is the current budget. Because after the meeting, I was sitting in there with some of Mayor Conger wasn't in there, but some of the other like Nathan and Chief of Staff Ron Schultes and public communication guru Kenny Cummings, and they were talking about publishing the budget book and putting it online. So the way they were talking about it, it's like it's not done yet. So,
okay.
and honestly, I was trying to remember if they even published it before it was passed last year. Because honestly, I wasn't expecting it to be publicly out there until it officially became public. Once it was passed, but I guess the plan is to put it up there tomorrow or sometime, hopefully before Tuesday.
I like that, and I do think that's another prevailing theme tonight. Is everybody, the city included, wants to be more transparent with what they're doing with their money, and everybody was on board with that, and that's good. It should be.
Well, I mean, 6, 7 years ago when Congress started campaigning for this thing, what was one of the words that he said a lot? Transparency. So that falls in line with that 7 years later.
And I honestly think he's done things that live up to that. Like, I know they had a lot of updating to do with a lot of stuff when his group took over, essentially, right? I know they revamped their entire I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, not financial system, but the way that they keep track of all that stuff.
Yeah, their accountability and accounting.
Yeah, right,
I mean, and the portal.
right.
I mean, if 10 years ago somebody told you, hey, at some point the city of Jackson is going to have there's going to be a website up where you can look at everything in the city budget all the way back 4 years, one response would probably be like, not while Jerry Giss is mayor.
Right.
Not because he was necessarily trying to hide anything, but he just didn't think outside the box of what he was already doing. He just kind of
Right.
went along his like normal.
He was coasting, man. Let's just be honest. Like the last few years, I mean, he was coasting. And that's not, I mean, it is what it is. And that was referenced, like something like that. And I remember one council person referenced that, something about 2019, or was this, but that's apples and oranges. I don't think that's a comparison. I don't think Mayor Conger set out to do things exactly like the previous administration did either. I mean, this is a forward moving type of administration, I feel like, and I think that it's been borne out over the last 6 years or however long it's been.
6.
So 6, yeah. So look, I was actually encouraged after tonight. Like, I thought they worked pretty well together. I thought the meeting was productive. At some point, they were spinning their wheels a little bit, but at least there was conversation, discussion. So Tuesday should be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Are you taking off from work that morning so that you can go to it?
I would love to, but summer school duties, buddy. Got to be there.
You're not like teaching in the classroom. Are you teaching in the classroom for summer?
Facilitating it. I'm over it. Like, I'm doing it. I'm the person. There's another person helping me. We're doing it together. But yeah, and she hadn't been here the last 2 days, so it's just been me. I mean, honestly, it's fine. It's pretty calm for like the 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon when the kids are in class and working. But every time between that, it's putting out fires all day. So yeah. I can't. Okay. I couldn't get away. Man, we're coming up on an hour and a half. This has been good. And is there anything else that we missed from this meeting tonight or about the upcoming city council meeting?
Well, you've mentioned a couple of times my opinion column.
Oh, shoot. My bad. Yes. Okay, let's talk about that because it ties in. I think it is important. Seriously. You wrote, I'm not going to use the word scathing, but you wrote a piece about something that Councilman JP Stovall said. Mm-hmm. And you and I both know JP. We know him separate from his, character as Patriot pastor. We know him as just a, regular person.
Right.
I think. And he he made a comment that initially you and our buddy Chuck really liked that. Mm-hmm. He said that if this was an election year, I would not vote for a tax increase. Mm-hmm. Right. Pretty much what he said. It's funny because I had the opposite response of you and Chuck. Because I'm no, vote for what is right for your constituents and your community, regardless of what it's going to do for you. So that was my initial
Right.
take away from that. And that's easy for me to say. I'm not in public office, but that was my initial reaction. You and Chuck had a different one. But then when he was getting some pushback on that, it seemed like he was like, "Oh no, I was just joking," and that's where you took issue, correct?
Oh yeah, he backed down like a wet spaghetti noodle. It was, and I totally get your point, and I don't disagree with your point. What Chuck and I like so much about it was, yeah, your attitude may not be the best one to have in this situation, but at least you're honest about it. Nobody else has that I can think of in my memory of covering local government that stretches all the way back to the olden days in 2016 of anybody saying something that bluntly honest. And the next morning, after I wrote the initial story from the meeting, I said, you know what, JP deserves J. If I'm gonna jump on his case when he's standing up yelling at his colleague to shut up after a meeting that didn't go his way, then I'm gonna give him an attaboy for doing something that may not necessarily be good, but is at least it has a good aspect to it. I had that written, ready to go. Was going to put it up Sunday, and then Sunday morning he puts up a video and walks back the comment slightly and connects my reporting, because I was the only one who had actually done any actual reporting on him saying that. Connecting my reporting to my favorite term in the world, clickbait. And I haven't told him this, but if we ever discuss it again, I'll tell him this, or maybe he's watching or will watch this later. But when he's not sitting on the city council platform or he's not behind the mic at a radio studio, he's a preacher. And him calling me clickbait or connecting me to clickbait is about the same thing as me calling him a prosperity gospel preacher. And so I'm like, all right, dude, boom. The way he put it when we were texting each other Tuesday after I released it, he said, you punch me, I'm going to punch back. And I told him, I said, well, technically you punched first. So, yeah. So I gave you not my finishing move if we're talking in professional wrestling terms, but yeah, I definitely gave him a
The
right
signature.
hook. Yeah.
You gave him the signature. You gave him the setup to the tombstone. If you're the Undertaker, you're walking the top rope and you're
Yes.
coming down, and then you're set.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, like this is, I know we like to not poke fun. We like to kind of get in the weeds about this local government stuff, and it can be kind of funny sometimes from the outside. But these are serious decisions that people are making, and they were elected to make serious decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am with you. Like, if you're going to say something, mean it. Don't back down from it. Truly, unless you truly have a change of mind. And I'm fine with people changing their mind. If they gather more information about something and they say, oh, I never saw it from that perspective, let me shift there. Of course, I have no problem with that. I think that's healthy. Mm-hmm. But, if you're doing it just to appease people, or you're worried about your image, or you're worried about votes or whatever else, I think these positions are too important for that kind of stuff. And as much as I disagree with somebody like Gary Deaton, I can tell you this: Gary Deaton would never back down from something like that. Gary Deaton's going to say what he says, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't, and he's going to go with it. So. Mm-hmm. And, Gary's old school, man. Like, I can respect that. And look, JP's young. I don't know how young he is. He may be my age. I don't know. He looks a lot younger than I do. He'll learn. I think he'll learn, right? Like, he's relatively new at this. So, I'm not saying I want to return to Gary Deaton, but hey, maybe that part of it. Because I do. I can respect that. I can respect that. But you guys are cool now, though, right? You and JP, y'all took a selfie and put it on Facebook.
And we were on the radio together with your good buddy Dan Reeves, where after we had to take 15 minutes to explain to Dan what the situation was with the tax increase proposal, we finally got into mine and JP's beef about 7 minutes before I had to leave to go get my kids. But yeah, we hashed it out, and he got to vent some of his frustrations publicly, and then he even came back during the show and apologized. And I was like, dude, don't apologize. If that's how you felt, feel it, own it, just like you should own it when you say something about when you might be willing to vote on a tax increase. Because I wasn't necessarily supporting it, but I wasn't criticizing it either. I was just appreciating the honesty. But also to all of our elected officials in Madison County and the city of Jackson. Don't call me clickbait.
So I have an issue with that too. We didn't get into all of that, but it seems like it's out of the Trump playbook, and a lot of people around here might appreciate that. But I think that's really a big problem that we have right now in our discourse is that if we don't like something, it's automatically wrong, or it's clickbait, or it's whatever else.
Oh, his Facebook post responding to my column. As I read it to my wife, I was doing my very bad Trump impression because it was worded exactly like Trump would have said it or tweeted if he were a Jackson City councilman and not the president of the United States.
God, I wish that were the case. Man.
That way you could see him at turntable maybe sometimes when you saw him.
Donald Trump would not go to turntable. I do not think that's where he would be. He'd be down at the Denny's, maybe. McDonald's. He likes McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's.
All right, buddy. Hour and a half. We killed it.
Yeah, and
I got summer school tomorrow.
Yeah, my phone a few minutes ago flashed I'm down to 10% battery power. So
all right, we're gonna close this one out. We will be back a week from Sunday night. And hopefully. We will have, I don't know if we're all still here, we'll have coverage of the city council meeting and whatever else happens this week in news. Hey, by the way, I've had 2 people ask me tonight, actually, where can they get physical copies of the Jackson Post if they don't subscribe? So where can you buy those in Jackson?
I don't have the graphic in front of me. It's got a list. I know if they live out south, the gas station at Highway 18, where Highway 18 turns off, I know it's down there. A couple of gas stations on North Highland. I think the one across Highland from Kroger, there at the corner of, is it Cooper Anderson and Highland? Just up from Northside High School. I think that's supposed to be another one. I've been into the Walgreens on Oilwell and seen it in there before. Oh, and the gas station on Van Drive.
Yes, that's where I've seen it.
Yeah, they're in front of Home Depot and Lowe's. Home Depot and
Ashley Furniture.
Hobby Lobby. Yeah, and Ashley Furniture. So
yeah, okay, awesome.
Definitely those. And if you subscribe and you get for $50, you get a full year of the print edition sent to your mailbox through the U.S. Postal Service. So it could get there Friday, maybe Monday before it gets there, but it does get there.
When I was getting it, it was every Friday. Boom, like clockwork. I would have it.
Oh, somebody else watching just said University Parkway in Highland. That's the. I thought University was on the other side of the road and Cooper Anderson was on, but okay, my bad. Either way, whatever. Up from Northside High School. Yeah, those are the main places I know that you're supposed to be able to get it.
Okay. Or just subscribe, because then you can access it anytime you want.
I was going to say $40 will get you online only, and you don't have to worry about killing trees. But if you need that birdcage liner.
I do. I need
$50.
Yeah,
and
I like it.
You'll have a year's supply of it.
Yeah. All right, man. Appreciate it, Brandon.
Should
be fun next Tuesday.
Thanks for watching, y'all, live and or not live. And be checking Twitter for live tweets Tuesday morning. And I've already told JP he's going to have at least 4 bingo squares. So
whoa, get ready. Clickbait. That's what that is. Bye.
See ya.